My fiancé hired professional saboteurs to ruin our wedding for a reality show. It started with a whisper, a rumor I'd dismissed like a mosquito in the dead of night. But then the whispers grew louder, morphing into a persistent hum, and suddenly it felt like the whole damn world was talking about us. My world, specifically, the one I'd so carefully built, so meticulously curated, and so confidently believed was as solid as bedrock. Turns out, it was made of sand, and a tidal wave I never saw coming was about to wash it all away. And you know, if you're finding yourself caught in something this intense, something this messed up, and you want to hear more stories like this, stories that peel back the layers and get to the raw, ugly truth of things, do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to like this, share it with anyone who might appreciate a good, hard dose of reality, and leave a comment below. Seriously, your thoughts are what keep this going. Her name was Chloe, and she was everything I'd ever wanted, or at least everything I'd convinced myself I wanted. The kind of woman who walked into a room and made everyone else feel a little less shiny. Gorgeous, of course, with that effortless grace that made me feel like a clumsy teenager every time she was near. But it was more than that. She was smart, sharp, and had this laugh that could disarm a charging bull. We met at a charity gala, the kind of event where everyone pretends to care about something noble while secretly judging each other's outfits. I was schmoozing, doing my corporate drone thing, when she walked in, radiating this aura of pure, unadulterated charisma. She was engaged to someone else, a finance bro with a trust fund thicker than my student loan debt. But within weeks, the universe, or maybe just a very persistent bartender at a dive bar we both happened to end up at, had rearranged things. He was history, and I was history too, in the best possible way. Our relationship was a whirlwind, a fairy tale with a modern urban twist. We lived in a sleek downtown apartment, the kind with floor-to-ceiling windows that made you feel like you were king of the concrete jungle. Our weekends were a blur of gallery openings, Michelin-starred dinners, and spontaneous trips to Napa. She loved the finer things, and honestly, I loved showing them to her. It was like I was finally living up to some unspoken promise, proving myself worthy of this dazzling creature who had somehow chosen me. Everyone said we were the perfect couple. Our friends envied us, our families were thrilled, and even my usually stoic father gave Chloe his nod of approval, a rare commodity. We were the golden couple, the ones everyone pointed to and said, "See, that's what you aim for." The proposal was straight out of a movie. A rooftop in Paris, the Eiffel Tower twinkling in the background, a champagne toast, and a ring that probably cost more than my first car. Tears, laughter, the whole 9 yards. She said yes, of course, and then we spent the next 6 months planning the wedding of the century. It was going to be epic. A vineyard estate in Sonoma, celebrity florist, a Michelin-starred chef flown in from Italy, a band that had played for presidents. Chloe was in her element, meticulously overseeing every detail, her eyes sparkling with a mix of joy and that familiar, intense focus. I was happy to let her run with it. My job was to show up, look good, and be the doting fiancé, and I was good at that. The first real tremor, the first hairline fracture in the facade, came about a month before the wedding. It was small, easily dismissed, but it lodged itself in my mind like a splinter. Chloe had been unusually stressed, more so than usual wedding planning stress. She was snapping at the caterers, having these intense phone calls she'd immediately hang up when I entered the room, and her sleep was even more erratic than usual. One evening, I found her in the study, hunched over her laptop, her face illuminated by the screen's harsh glow. She looked frantic. When I asked what was wrong, she just waved it away, saying it was a minor hiccup with the videographer, something about conflicting schedules. But the look in her eyes wasn't about a schedule. It was deeper, a shadow of something I couldn't quite name. Then came the anonymous emails. They started subtly, vague insinuations about Chloe's past, whispers of infidelity from a previous relationship. I confronted her, of course. She flew into a rage, accusing me of not trusting her, of letting some bitter ex poison my mind. She was so convincing, so hurt, that I felt like an idiot for even entertaining the thought. She had a way of making you feel like the villain, even when you were just trying to understand. I apologized, blamed the pre-wedding jitters, and we moved on. But the unease lingered, a dull ache in my gut. The next incident was harder to ignore. Our florist, a wonderfully eccentric woman named Isabel, called me in a panic. Apparently, someone had deliberately sabotaged a delivery of rare orchids that were crucial for Chloe's bouquet. They were bruised, wilted, completely unsalvageable. Isabel was devastated, and Chloe was predictably beside herself. She was inconsolable, weeping about how this was supposed to be perfect, how someone was trying to ruin everything. I held her, tried to comfort her, but a knot of suspicion was tightening in my chest. It felt too
incidental, too deliberate. Then there was the issue with the wedding invitations. A batch went out with a typo that made one of the key addresses unreadable. The printing company swore it was an error on their end, but it felt like more than a mistake. It was a pattern, a series of unfortunate events that were starting to look less like bad luck and more like a carefully orchestrated demolition. I started looking at Chloe differently, seeing the strain behind her smiles, the flicker of something calculating in her eyes when she thought I wasn't watching. I brushed it off as paranoia, the stress of the looming wedding, but the whispers, the emails, the ruined orchids, the mangled invitations, they were all adding up. One night, I couldn't sleep. The apartment was silent, save for Chloe's soft breathing from the bedroom. I padded into the living room, needing some air, and my gaze fell on a stack of papers on the coffee table, a place where Chloe usually kept her wedding planning binders. One of them was slightly ajar, and a loose page had fluttered out. Curiosity, a gnawing, unwelcome beast, took hold. I picked it up. It was a contract, a production contract. My blood ran cold. It was between Chloe and some obscure production company, Spectacle Creations. The terms were horrifying. It detailed a plan to create maximum dramatic impact for a new reality television show titled Wedding Crashed. The goal, to document the spectacular unraveling of a high-profile wedding. And it wasn't just about documenting the drama, it was about creating it. The contract outlined specific incidents designed to generate conflict and suspense. Sabotaged flowers, communication breakdowns, unexpected guest appearances that would cause chaos. It was all there, laid out in black and white. My stomach churned. Chloe, my Chloe, the woman I was about to marry, had orchestrated this. She had planned to have our wedding ruined. But why? The contract offered clues.
Financial incentives for the talent involved in creating the drama, and a significant payout for Chloe herself if the season's ratings were high. She wasn't just planning a wedding, she was planning a spectacle, and I was apparently going to be the unsuspecting star of her twisted show. The implications hit me like a physical blow. The emails, the ruined orchids, the invitations. It wasn't bad luck, it was a script. My life, our love story, reduced to a manufactured narrative for public consumption. I reread the contract, my hands shaking. There was a clause about pre-planned infidelity scenarios to be introduced in the final act, designed to shock and engage the audience. My mind reeled. Was this all a lie? Was her love for me just another performance? The woman I thought I knew, the woman I was ready to spend my life with, was capable of this level of deceit. The shock was quickly giving way to a cold, simmering rage. I went back to the bedroom, my heart pounding in my chest, a symphony of betrayal. Chloe was asleep, her face serene in the moonlight filtering through the blinds. It was a cruel joke, this peaceful facade. I stood over her, looking at the woman I was supposed to marry, and saw a stranger, a master manipulator. The laughter, the tears, the whispered endearments, were they all just part of the act? The wedding, the symbol of our commitment, was to be the grand finale of her deception. I felt a profound sense of loss, not just of a future, but of a past I now questioned. Every memory felt tainted, every intimate moment now a potential scene in her manufactured drama. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and walked out of the apartment, the contract clutched in my hand. The cool night air did nothing to calm the storm raging inside me. I needed to understand. I needed to know the extent of this betrayal. The city lights blurred as I drove, each mile taking me further from the life I thought I had, and deeper into a truth I never wanted to uncover. The thought of the wedding, of standing at the altar, of promising forever to a woman who had planned to shatter it all for a TV show, was a nausea-inducing prospect. I had to do something. But what? How do you confront someone who has built their entire life, their entire persona on deception? And more importantly, how do you pick up the pieces of a love that was never real to begin with? The road ahead felt as dark and uncertain as the night itself. The drive was a blur. I don't even remember where I went, just that I kept driving, the contract crumpled on the passenger seat, a physical manifestation of the gut punch I'd taken. The city lights bled into each other, a smear of neon and despair. I pulled over somewhere, a deserted industrial park lot, the kind of place where you go when you don't want to be found. The silence was deafening, broken only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. I got out of the car, the cold asphalt biting through my thin sneakers, and just stood there, breathing in the stale, metallic air. My mind was a battlefield. Every happy memory, every shared
months-long, meticulously planned operation. And the worst part? She'd done it all with a smile. She'd looked me in the eye, accepted my proposal, helped me pick out the tux, talked about her honeymoon, all while knowing she was planning to stage our downfall for a national audience. The thought of her feigning vulnerability, feigning love, sent a wave of nausea through me. I felt utterly, profoundly stupid. How could I have missed it? How could I have been so blind? I replayed our conversations, searching for tells, for clues I'd glossed over. Her stress about the videographer. It wasn't about scheduling. It was about ensuring the camera angles were perfect for the stage drama. The anonymous emails, probably sent by her or someone on her payroll, just to plant seeds of doubt, to make me question our reality before she fully manipulated it. I finally drove home, the first hint of dawn painting the sky a sickly gray. The apartment felt different now, tainted. Every piece of furniture, every framed photo seemed to mock me with its pristine facade. Chloe was still asleep, oblivious. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her. Her chest rose and fell with a soft rhythm, her face relaxed in slumber. It was the face of the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew. But underneath that facade, there was a chilling emptiness. I remembered the way she'd looked at me sometimes, a flicker of something intense, almost predatory, that I'd always interpreted as passion. Now I saw it for what it was, calculation. I needed proof, not just the contract, but something irrefutable. I needed to see the orchestrator in action, to witness the performance firsthand. My mind raced. The contract mentioned specific incidents, sabotaged flowers, that had already happened, communication breakdowns, what did that mean? Unexpected guest appearances, that sounded like something she'd have control over. And then there was the kicker, pre-planned infidelity scenarios. The mere thought sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through me, a twisted mix of horror and morbid curiosity. I knew I couldn't confront her directly, not yet, not with knowing the full extent of our game. I needed to be smart, to play our game better than she did. That meant observing, gathering intel, and waiting for the right moment. I decided to pretend nothing had happened. It felt like the hardest thing I'd ever have to do, to put on the mask of the oblivious, devoted fiancé, but it was the only way to get the truth. The next few days were a surreal ordeal. I went through the motions, smiling, kissing Chloe, talking about wedding details, all while a hurricane of rage and confusion raged within me. Every touch felt like a betrayal, every compliment a lie. I watched her, dissecting her every move. She seemed energized. The wedding planning, which had been a source of stress, now seemed to invigorate her. She was on the phone constantly, her voice a hushed murmur when I entered the room. I'd catch glimpses of her smiling at her phone, a secret, triumphant smile that sent shivers down my spine. One afternoon, she was on a call with her wedding planner, a perky woman named Brittany. Chloe was unusually insistent about a specific timing for the ceremony's recessional, something about optimal light conditions for aerial shots. Aerial shots? I'd never heard anything about that. I'd assumed the wedding would be filmed by a standard crew, not with drones. It was another detail that felt off. Later that week, I overheard a snippet of a conversation she was having in the walk-in closet. She was whispering, and I only got a few words, but they were enough to send a fresh wave of ice through my veins. The cameras are rolling. Keep the champagne on ice. He's going to lose it. My heart pounded against my ribs. They were filming now, already. And who was he? Was she talking about me? The contract mentioned Spectacle Creations. I'd done a quick search online when I first found the contract, but it was an obscure company, very little public information. I decided to dig deeper.
Using an anonymous VPN and a burner email, I started sifting through obscure industry forms and business registries. It took hours, but I finally found a lead. Spectacle Creations was a shell company, a front for a much larger, notorious reality TV production conglomerate, one known for its aggressive tactics and ethically questionable programming. They were the ones who specialized in turning people's lives into spectacles. I felt a sick kind of validation. This wasn't just Chloe's idea. She was working with professionals who were adept at manufacturing drama. This also meant there was likely a whole crew, disguised as wedding vendors, already embedded in our lives. The caterers, the band, even some of the venue staff, they were all part of the show. The most chilling realization came a few days before the wedding. Chloe announced that she decided to do a first look with me, something she previously dismissed as too cliché. She'd seemed so excited about it, her eyes gleaming. "It'll be so romantic, darling," she purred, stroking my cheek. I'd agreed, my stomach twisting into knots. Now I understood. The first look wasn't for our private moment. It was for the cameras. It was another manufactured scene designed to elicit a specific emotional response from me for their audience. I started to notice other things, small details I'd previously overlooked. The way certain staff members at the vineyard would hover, their eyes seeming to linger a moment too long. The subtly placed microphones disguised as decor. The fact that Chloe had insisted on using her own personal photographer for the engagement photos. a guy whose portfolio consisted entirely of dramatic, staged shots. I chalked it up to her perfectionism. Now I saw it as pre-production. The contract also mentioned a surprise guest. It was vague, just a placeholder, but it was listed under Act 3, the grand unraveling. My mind raced. Who could it be? An ex? A family member with a grudge? Chloe had a knack for manipulating people, for drawing them into her orbit. Was she planning to invite someone from my past to stir the pot? Someone who knew something she could use? The tension was becoming unbearable. I was living a double life, playing the part of the happy groom-to-be while secretly unraveling my fiancé's elaborate deception. The wedding was just 3 days away, and the fear of what might happen, of what they had planned for that day, was a constant gnawing presence. One evening, Chloe was out shopping for last-minute accessories. I knew this was my chance. I had to find out more. I went back to her study, the scene of my initial discovery. I searched her desk, her drawers, anything that might contain more information about Spectacle Creations or their plans. Most of it was wedding-related, meticulously organized. But then, tucked away in a hidden compartment of her antique writing desk, I found it, a small encrypted USB drive. My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. It took me a while to crack the password, a combination of our anniversary and a pet name she used. When the files finally opened, my blood ran cold. It wasn't just a contract and a vague outline. It was a detailed, shot-by-shot breakdown of the entire wedding day, complete with storyboards, camera angles, and scripted dialogue for certain impromptu moments. There were even character bios from me and other key people who were being featured. And then I saw it. Under a section titled The Unveiling was a name, Mark. Mark. My stomach lurched. Mark was Chloe's ex-boyfriend, the finance bro with the trust fund, the one she'd left for me. The contract had mentioned a pre-planned infidelity scenario. Was she planning to have him show up? To create a scene? To make it look like I wasn't enough for her? That she'd always loved him? Or worse, that she was still secretly involved with him? The thought of him, the symbol of everything I'd overcome to be with Chloe, being a pawn in her game was almost too much to bear. But the most disturbing discovery wasn't Mark. It was a separate file, a series of video clips. They were rough, unedited, clearly from candid phone recordings. And in every single clip, the subject was me. Her observing me, her voiceover, cold, analytical, describing my reactions, my vulnerabilities, my emotional triggers. She had been meticulously documenting me, studying me, as if I were a lab rat. One clip showed her watching me sleep, whispering, "So trusting. It makes it so easy." The air left my lungs. She didn't just want to ruin our wedding. She wanted to dissect my very being for her twisted entertainment. The love I'd felt, the trust I'd placed in her, it had all been a colossal, humiliating joke. I was a prop in her drama. I closed the laptop, my vision blurred with unshed tears, a raw, burning rage consuming me. She wasn't just my fiancé, she was my tormentor. And the wedding, the day I was supposed to pledge my life to her, was going to be the stage for my complete and utter destruction. I had to stop her. But how? How do you fight someone who has weaponized your own heart against you? The clock was ticking, and the show was about to begin. The silence in the apartment was a scream. Chloe was still out, probably strategizing with her minions, or perhaps enjoying a final celebratory latte before the grand premiere of her masterpiece. I walked into the living room, the soft glow of the modern lamps doing nothing to warm the icy grip that had settled around my chest. Every surface, every object screamed of our life together, a life that was, I now realized, entirely manufactured on her end. The framed photos on the mantelpiece, our smiles frozen in time, felt like grotesque propaganda. That picture from our trip to the Grand Canyon, she'd cried for an hour that morning because I'd forgotten to get her favorite oat milk. I'd held her, soothed her, and now I knew it was all an act, a calculated performance to maintain the illusion of the sensitive, vulnerable woman I thought I was protecting. The sheer audacity, the years of what? Was it all a lie from day one? Or did it start later? A slow rot, a creeping ambition that suffocated the genuine connection we once had, if it ever truly existed. I sank on the couch, the plush fabric offering no comfort. My mind replayed the video clips from the USB.
Her voice so calm, so detached, dissecting my reactions. He got so defensive when I mentioned his father. Classic. Leverage that. Or his insecurity about his job is palpable. We can exploit that in the second act. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about breaking me, stripping me bare for public consumption. The thought of her watching me, studying me like some specimen, sent a fresh wave of revulsion through me. I felt violated in a way I couldn't even articulate. My deepest vulnerabilities, the things I'd only shared with her, were now ammunition. Then there was Mark, the surprise guest, the pre-planned infidelity scenario. The thought of him walking into our wedding, playing his part, an unwitting accomplice to Chloe's grand scheme, made me want to vomit. Was he aware of the extent of her plan, or was he just another pawn, an unsuspecting player in her elaborate game? The contract had mentioned a scripted confrontation between Mark and me, a fight, a public spectacle.
And Chloe would be right there, the innocent victim caught between us, weeping for the cameras. I needed to be there before them, before Mark arrived, before the cameras were fully rolling, before the narrative was locked in. I couldn't let her orchestrate my humiliation. The wedding was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon at the venue. It was currently 9 in the morning. I had a few hours. A plan, born out of desperation and a primal need to regain some semblance of control, began to form. It was reckless, it was dangerous, and it was the only thing I could think of. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead. I had to get to the vineyard. I had to intercept Mark. I had to find the production crew and somehow, some way, expose Chloe's charade before it was too late. The thought of facing her, of confronting the woman I'd planned to marry, filled me with a sickening dread. But the alternative, letting her destroy me, was far worse. I grabbed my keys, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I didn't know what I was going to say, what I was going to do, but I knew I had to do something. The drive to the vineyard was a fever dream. Every mile felt like an eternity, my mind racing with scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. I imagined Mark arriving, confused, and Chloe greeting him with a rehearsed sob, ushering him backstage, whispering instructions. I pictured the cameras, hidden in floral arrangements, disguised as vintage lenses, their silent red eyes watching every move. The idea of the surprised guest being my ex-rival, the symbol of my past insecurities, being brought in to finalize my destruction, was a bitter pill to swallow. As I pulled into the sprawling estate, the manicured lawns and stately stone buildings that were supposed to represent our perfect beginning now seemed like a grotesque movie set. A few white tents were already set up, the scent of expensive catering wafting on the breeze. Delivery trucks, their sides emblazoned with generic logos, were parked discreetly. I knew with chilling certainty that many of these vendors were not what they appeared to be. I spotted a small, discreetly marked van with a satellite dish on top, parked behind a row of ancient oak trees. Spectacle creations, no doubt. I parked my car far from the main entrance, blending in with the few service vehicles. My instinct was to storm in, to yell, to expose everything. But that's exactly what Chloe would expect. That's what the cameras would be waiting for. I needed to be strategic. I slipped through a side entrance, the cool stone walls of the winery offering a semblance of anonymity. The air inside was thick with the smell of fermenting grapes and expensive floral arrangements. It was too quiet, too serene, the calm before the storm. I moved through the empty halls, my footsteps echoing unnervingly. I saw a group of men in catering uniforms setting up a buffet. They looked intense, too focused. Their conversations were hushed, efficient. I avoided eye contact, my senses on high alert. I needed to find Mark. The contract had mentioned a specific arrival time for him, post-ceremony, pre-reception toast. So I had a window. I found my way to a small, secluded courtyard, a place Chloe had described as being perfect for intimate surprise moments. And there, sitting on a stone bench, looking bewildered and slightly out of place in a rented tuxedo, was Mark. He was younger than me, with that slicked back hair and a perfectly sculpted jawline that always managed to make me feel a little inadequate. He was fiddling with his cufflinks, his brow furrowed. This was my chance. I took a deep breath and walked towards him. He looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes, recognition, then a hint of something I couldn't quite decipher. Apprehension? "Mark," I said, my voice surprisingly steady.
"That's right," I said, forcing a smile that felt brittle. "I was told you might be here." He stood up slowly, his gaze shifting from my face to the surrounding area, as if expecting someone to jump out. I don't know what's going on, man," Chloe said. She said she wanted to talk to me about some unfinished business. He looked genuinely confused. "Unfinished business," I repeated, my voice dangerously low. "Yeah, I think I know what kind of unfinished business she's talking about." I took a step closer, my voice dropping to a near whisper. "She's been filming this whole thing, Mark, a reality show. Our wedding is the grand finale." His face contorted in disbelief. "What? No way. That's crazy." Chloe wouldn't she? I interrupted, my anger finally bubbling to the surface. "She's been documenting me for months. Every word, every reaction. She's got cameras everywhere, disguised as decorations in the floral arrangements. There's a whole production crew out there watching us, waiting for us to perform." I saw the dawning horror in his eyes. He was starting to believe me. "But why? Why would she do this?" "For the spectacle," I spat out. "For the ratings. She's been planning this for months. The contract I found, it's all laid out. Every surprise, every emotional breakdown. You're part of it, Mark. The surprised guest, the infidelity scenario." He paled, his hand going to his chest. "Me? No. She said she just wanted closure, that she needed me to be there to make sure you understood her feelings." He sounded utterly devastated. "Her feelings? Her feelings are for the cameras, Mark. She's been using you, just like she's been using me." The words were harsh, but I couldn't hold them back. This was the truth, ugly and brutal. "She wants you to walk in, create a scene, maybe even pretend you're still together, to make me look like a fool, like I wasn't enough for her." He sank back onto the bench, running his hands through his perfect hair. I can't believe this. I really thought she still cared." He looked utterly lost. "She cares about her brand, Mark, her career," I said, my voice hardening. "And you, me, our lives, we're just the props she's using to build it." I looked around the courtyard. "The cameras are probably rolling right now. They'll be waiting for you to arrive, for us to interact. They'll be hoping for a fight." He looked at me, his eyes wide with a desperate plea. "What do we do?" A grim resolve settled over me. "We don't give them what they want. We refuse to play the game." I extended my hand. "Come with me. We're going to find the director, the producer, whoever is in charge of this mess, and we're going to shut it down." Mark hesitated for a moment, then took my hand. His grip was surprisingly firm. "Okay, I'm with you." We moved with a new purpose, navigating the labyrinthine corridors of the vineyard. We avoided the vendors, sticking to the service passages and less trafficked areas. We overheard snippets of hushed conversations, nervous laughter, the clinking of glasses. The illusion of a perfect wedding was a thin veneer over a hive of frantic production activity. Finally, we found it. A large, discreetly marked tent, tucked away behind the main building, labeled simply Operations. Inside, a whirlwind of activity, people hunched over monitors, speaking into headsets, their faces illuminated by the glow of screens.
A man with a sharp suit and an even sharper haircut, whom I assumed was the director, was barking orders into a microphone. This was it, the heart of the operation. We walked in, heads turned. The director paused, his eyes narrowing on us. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, his voice laced with annoyance. "This area is restricted." I stepped forward, Mark by my side. "My name is Jake, and this is Mark. We're here to talk about the spectacle you're creating." The director's face flickered with a moment of panic, quickly masked by professional composure. "I don't know what you're talking about. This is a private event." "No, it's not," I said, my voice ringing with newfound authority. "It's a TV show, and it's over." I pulled out the USB drive and held it up. "I have the contract, I have the shot list, I have the character bios, including Chloe's analysis of my every weakness." The director's jaw tightened. He exchanged a nervous glance with a woman beside him who was furiously typing on a laptop. "You don't understand," he said, his tone shifting, attempting to placate. "This is just entertainment. People love this kind of thing." "People love authenticity," I countered. "They don't love being manipulated. They don't love seeing people's lives dissected for profit." I looked at Mark. He thought you were just here for closure. I thought I was marrying the love of my life. Mark stepped forward. "Chloe told me
She said she needed me there to help Jake understand her feelings, that she was worried about hurting him. The director scoffed. Details. We'll edit around it. The audience will love the drama. The confrontation between the two men. It's gold. It's sick, I said, my voice raw with emotion, and I'm not going to be a part of it. I looked directly at the director. You can pack up your cameras. This show is canceled. If you try to film anything else, if you release any of this footage, I will sue Spectacle Creations for every dime you have. I'll go to the press myself. I'll expose every underhanded tactic you've ever employed. The director's face was a mask of calculating rage. He knew he was cornered. The threat of legal action, coupled with the potential for negative publicity, was a potent combination. You can't do this, he growled. I already have, I said, my gaze unwavering. And Mark's here as a witness to your creative process. Mark nodded grimly. Every word of it. The director stared at us for a long moment, his eyes darting between Mark and me. Then, with a sharp exhale, he turned to the woman at the laptop. Shut it down, now. All units, pack it up. A ripple of confused murmurs spread through the tent. Equipment began to be dismantled, cables coiled, monitors powered down. The energy shifted from frenetic anticipation to dejected resignation. Now, I said, my voice still tight, where can I find Chloe? The director pointed vaguely towards the main house. She's in her bridal suite, getting ready, probably has no idea. Mark and I walked out of the tent, leaving the shattered illusion behind us. The air outside felt cleaner, lighter. We made our way towards the bridal suite, the tension between us easing, replaced by a shared sense of grim victory. We had stopped it. We had taken back our lives from her narrative. The door to the bridal suite was slightly ajar. I could hear Chloe's voice, high-pitched and excited, talking to what sounded like her bridesmaids. And then right after the vows, when he's completely overwhelmed, Mark will walk in. It's going to be epic, the look on his face. My heart sank. She hadn't found out yet. She was still living in her fantasy. I pushed the door open. Chloe spun around, a vision in white lace and tulle. Her perfectly coiffed hair, the radiant smile, the glistening tears of anticipation in her eyes. It was all in place. The radiant bride, ready for her close-up. But when she saw me, standing there with Mark, her smile faltered. The air left her lungs in a sudden gasp. Jake? Her voice was a whisper, laced with confusion. What are you doing here? The ceremony? It's not happening, Chloe, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. The show is canceled. Her eyes darted between me and Mark, a dawning horror spreading across her face. What are you talking about? Mark, what is he doing here? He's here to tell you that his part in your little production is over, I said, stepping further into the room. The bridesmaids, frozen in shock, stared at us, and so is mine. Her eyes narrowed, the practiced vulnerability hardening into something cold and calculated. What did you do? I saw the contract, Chloe. I saw the USB drive. I know everything. I let that sink in. Her face, a moment ago so full of theatrical emotion, now drained of all color. The mask was crumbling. You went through my things? She stammered, her voice shaking. I had to, I said, the rage I'd suppressed for days finally finding its voice. You were planning to destroy me, to make a spectacle of my humiliation. You recorded me, Chloe. You studied my vulnerabilities. You turned our entire relationship into a script for your twisted entertainment. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they didn't look like tears of sadness. They looked like tears of fury. You don't understand. This was my chance, my opportunity to finally be seen, to be someone. By lying, by betraying everyone who ever cared about you? Mark's voice was quiet, but carried immense weight. You used me, Chloe. You lied to me. You used us both for your own gain. It was for the best, she cried, her voice rising. You two are never good enough for me. I deserve more. I deserve a bigger life. The raw, naked ambition, stripped of its pretense, was horrifying. This wasn't about love. It wasn't about passion. It was about fame, about being the center of attention, no matter what the cost. Well, congratulations, I said, my voice flat. You got your spotlight, just not the one you expected. The show is over, Chloe. The audience walked out. I turned and walked out of the room, Mark following close behind. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The sobs and screams of a woman whose carefully constructed world had just imploded echoed behind me, but they were just noise now. They were the last desperate cries of a performance that had been abruptly shut down. Stepping out of the bridal suite into the bright, indifferent sunshine felt like emerging from a dark, suffocating dream. The wedding guests, arriving for what they thought would be a joyous occasion, were starting to look confused, murmuring amongst themselves. The vendors were packing up, their faces grim. The grand spectacle was over before it even began. I got into my car, the keys cold in my hand. Mark stood by the door, his expression unreadable. "Are you going to be okay?" I asked, my voice rough. He gave a wire, humorless smile. "I don't know, but at least I know the truth now, and I didn't become the villain in her story." He paused. "Thanks, Jake, for doing this." "We did it," I corrected. "We stopped it." He nodded. "Yeah, we did." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the growing crowd of bewildered guests. I watched him go, a strange sense of emptiness settling over me. There was no catharsis, no grand revelation of love, just the stark, brutal reality of betrayal. I started the engine, the familiar rumble, a grounding sensation.
As I pulled away from the vineyard, the perfect facade of the estate receded in my rearview mirror. The air in my car was heavy, thick with unspoken words and the ghosts of a future that would never be. I didn't feel relief, not really, just a profound exhaustion, a hollow ache where my heart used to be. The road ahead was uncertain, the landscape of my life irrevocably altered. But as I drove, the city lights blurring in the distance, a single quiet thought formed. I was free. Free from the performance, free from the lie. And that, in itself, was a beginning. A difficult, painful, but undeniably real beginning.